Hello there, YouTube and makers, and thanks for joining me today. On today's installment, I will be machining the plug or go no-go gauge for the Kozo Hiraoka Pennsylvania A3 switcher steam locomotive engine in 3/4 inch scale to run on a 3.5 inch gauge track in a 040 configuration or layout. This gauge will be used to set the diameter on the journal boxes in which the axle bearings will ride for the tender. Now, in the book, there's a little bit, I think, of a translation discrepancy in which this one area of the diagram, it calls the gauge a go, not go. I think in the general lexicon, it's called a go, no go, so that might be attributed to a translation issue. Now, be sure to also stay to the very end of the video because I'll be showcasing another great Journeyman trick of the day. Come on over and join me at the bench and let's make some chips.
I'm going to begin by just taking a light skim cut and facing off my workpiece. Luckily, it basically brought it into zero, so I don't have to do too many fiddling. I'm working on a piece of hot rolled steel here. So I touched off a couple times. First time was a little bit hard, second time more delicate, and just removing about 10 thousandths just to get a uniform baseline. I'm machining here a scrapped arbor that was used from the tender wheels. And nothing terribly wrong with it, it's just that I didn't feel it was a tight enough fit, so the first one of the early go around. So I've got about 34 thousandths to 36 thousandths. So I'm going to go in and probably take off about 10 here, I think. Still getting used to trying out these nice 164 radius AI Warner high-speed steel cutter inserts. Taking a pressure cut here. Let's see where I'm at. Which I'll quick little wipe. I'm going to let it cool off to contract. Any heat induced expansion. And looks like I still got another 12 thousandths to take off. So not too bad. And I'm not going to take that all off in one go. I'm going to split that up. So, now, I'm not going to go just the depth of the journal bearing. I'm actually going to go probably a little extra 30 thousandths or so it's a little bit longer. And I'm not going to machine the entire length of this plug gauge. I'm going to leave some of it just in case I have a little bit of a space to work with in case I need to remake it. So only got about 4 thousandths left to go on that no-go portion. So that's not too much. So it's only going to be another 2 thou off the radius. So it's not much coming off. Take a light pressure cut here. See, nothing came off this on the pressure cut, so it really didn't deflect the workpiece any. Let's see where we are at. That is good. Do love working with this Sherline, these AR Warners. Go in 2000s, it removes 2000s off the radius. And, oops, touched off a little bit hard, so I'm going to come in a couple thousandths and reface that and go back to 0 on the hand wheel. But luckily, since I left the no-go portion a little bit longer, I've got a good 20 thousandths extra left to play with. So that's why it's nice again to, whenever possible, build in these margins of error. Still figuring out getting down my hand-eye coordination. But once that's set, I'm going to go in now and remove the last couple thousandths for the go portion, so the 0.394, and just enough to where it's about half the depth of the journal box. And That way it has enough to go in, but it'll stop midway through the machine portion, 0.396. Unfortunately, it does make it a little bit hard in this view to see, but from my perspective, it is there, and I can see it by the naked eye. Got to figure out a way, if possible, to dye it to make it a little bit clearer for when I use it. But I took a bit of chamfer on it just with a file, and just to knock off that edge, and check that end portion. It's a little bit more harder and fiddly when working with such a small area. But here we go. Nice. 0.394 on the money. And it is a little over by a couple 10,000s, but that's fine.
Now that was a joy to machine and went really well. A little disclaimer, I had maintained my machine in the meantime. I removed the cross slide table, completely disassembled it, cleaned all the screws, the gibs, completely re-oiled it before machining this, as well as the lead screw. I used pipe cleaners and cleaned out all the grooves, basically looped them around the lead screw and turned the handle all the way down, switched it out, turned the handle all the way back, and completely lubed it. And one of the reasons why I ended up having to do that is that in my previous installment, I machined the journal bearings out of phosphor bronze. And that phosphor bronze is everywhere. It is everywhere in a wicked kind of crazy way. And it is everywhere and in places that I swear seem to violate all the known rules of physics. And I just don't know how they get in those places. Now, with a clean machine that's well lubed and reassembled and ready to go, with these A.R. Warner high-speed steel cutters, it went really well. And I think I made a great, really nice, really accurate go, no-go plug gauge. But to machine it so well, I had to apply a little bit of advice and technical expertise that was passed on down to me by the Journeyman machinist. In this case, it was doing what they called a finish cut. What was going on with the Journeyman machinist and the example they provided is that in the instance of having something like, say, with 50 thousandths left to remove off the diameter of a part, I would basically take that number and split it in half. In the first part, they would remove 25 thousandths. Then would go back in and remove another 20 thousandths, and using the same exact readings and settings, run that cutter back over the part and do a pressure cut. After the pressure cut would happen, then would occur the sometimes all important allowing the part to cool and contract and come back down to room temperature. Then they would remeasure and take a final cut. In my instance and in my video, what I just did is sort of the same thing. At first, I began by removing 20 thousandths. Then I removed 10 thousandths. Then took a pressure cut, remeasured, let the part cool down, and then took my final cut. And I was able to really dial it in there and get really good, solid, tight measurements, really, really close, sub 10 thousandths. But there is a little bit where I found a bit of confusion on the part. And in the text of the book, Kozo Hiraoka mentions if the gauge stops in the hole at the line of 0.396 or 396 thousandths of an inch diameter, the hole has a bore between 0.394 and 0.396. Yet, on that adjacent diagram, it shows a go no go gauge or go not go gauge with a diameter of 394 for go and 395 for not go. This discrepancy is a bit of a big one. Because on the one end, if the journal is made to the max dimension of 0.3959, and the axle bearings, which were just made by me in a previous installment, had a range of being anywhere from 392 to 393, they were on the smaller side. That means that roughly the difference in diameter between the two parts, the bearing and the journal bearing, or journal box, would be roughly 4 thousandths, or the bearing would have roughly an area of 2 thousandths around it to float. That being said, on the opposite end, if the bearing were 0.393 and the journal box was, say, on the smaller side at 0.3941, the difference in diameter is just over 1 thousandths. And in the radius, in terms of space around the bearing, in terms of radius, it's an area of space difference between the two parts as being less than 0.5 thousandths, which seems a little bit now on the tight end. Unfortunately, there aren't any kind of specs or dimensions or discussion on this about how much space I would want for a journal bearing on the tender, which will be pulled by the steam locomotive in this build. So if you guys have any idea or knowledge, please comment below. I'd like to hear your experiences and your thoughts on the matter. If you're interested in any of the tools you see me use here today, or finding out more, be sure to check out the links below. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and if you find today's Journeyman trick of the day useful, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another Journeyman tip or trick of the day. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I really appreciate it. Till next time, have fun, stay safe, and keep making chips.